I want to start by welcoming a few people. I think this is your water, John. I'll just give that to you. We have our conservative MLA. He's actually from Wainwright, but when the new boundary ridings come along, he will be our MLA, which will only be for about 12 hours because I think as soon as they call the election, the ridings change. But where's Wes Taylor? Wes Taylor's here from. There we are. Hello, Wes. Thanks for driving up from Wainwright. And I know we have at least 3 or 4 county councillors here. Maybe you'll all just stand up and give us a wave. I see we've got 3, and I thought I saw, there, Jason's there too. So we've got 4 county councillors, which I certainly appreciate them being here because one of the things that I suggested actually at the Rural Crime Watch meeting was I said, why don't we take, it's more or less $200,000 per police officer just for easy figure. And I said, why don't we go to the county and ask them, they take $1 million out of their budget to hire 5 more police officers, and then we'll go to the city and ask them to hire 5 more police officers, and then we'll go to the province and ask them to hire 5 more force, and then go to the feds and ask them to hire 5 more force. And I certainly realize that it's not the county's mandate to have to protect its citizens, but I think we all realize there's not much point having a smooth road if you get home and your furniture and your truck have been stolen. And so, to their credit, there was a couple of the councillors, I know Clint, you were there at the Rural Crime meeting, I think, Jason was there at the Rural Crime meeting as well. And to their credit, they've been talking about that. I've met with them, and I also, I've talked for literally hours with Daryl Wright and Paul from the Rural Crime Watch, and we spent a lot of time talking about, what we could actually do. Like as you talk about this, there's an awful lot of things that need to be done with, changing the do not pursue thing, longer sentences, tougher sentences, quicker trials. There's a whole host of those things, but none of us can actually, we can work over time, we can work together to try and get our politicians to change that, but what we were trying to do was have a few suggestions that we could actually, as a community, we could start tonight or tomorrow doing them. And one of the other suggestions that I made, and we've been talking about it quite extensively, it's sort of a work in progress, but I think we all spent probably more time than we should on Facebook and Twitter, but one of the things I saw on either Facebook or Twitter the other day, the fellow said when something needs to be done, of course, the best thing to do is the right thing, and the second best thing to do is the wrong thing, and the worst thing to do is nothing. And so, if anybody has a better suggestion than what we're suggesting to you now, we'd be only too happy to hear it. But in the meantime, let's do something. And so, what I suggested, and it was as a result of a story I've heard about 3 or 4 times. My friend was building a new shop, and in the process of getting gates put up, and he got to his shop one morning, and the door had been broken open, and some of his stuff was gone. As it turned out, he was going away on holidays that day, and he thought, by the time I get home from holidays, my darn shop's going to be empty. So he hired a security guard to spend the nights there while he was away. Well, about 2 nights later, 4 o'clock in the morning, down the road comes this set of lights. Turns in, the security guy turned on the lights in his car, and here's a white single cab Chev half-ton with a red fuel tank in the back of it. Well, it just turned and headed off down the road. Well, he phoned me from holidays and said, yeah, they were back, and this is what it was. So at supper time, I was telling Dad and Dawn, and when I told him, Dawn said, I followed that white truck. As you know, there's not many white single cab Chev half-tons with a red fuel tank, and if you happen to be driving a white Chev single cab with a red fuel tank, we've got a lie detector test right over there. You can tell us what you were doing last week. But in any event, I hope you're not here. But in any event, Dawn said, I followed that truck down the road past Keitner's the other day. It was going so slow, I was just going to pass it, and it turned north at Neil Anderson's corner. I mentioned this to another lady. She said, my dad woke up in the night, he heard something, he saw that truck pulling out of our yard. So I've only mentioned it to a few people, and quite a few people have seen it. So my suggestion, to you, and again, we have the idea. We're sort of working through how it would work. Is I think there's 15,000 people in the community, probably 7,000 or 8,000 households. But if 5,000 of us would, you can send out these mass texts, and if we would all give our phone numbers to as we were talking with Daryl and with Paul, we started out talking about doing it through the Rural Crime Watch, but as John pointed out, we were quite excited about it. Daryl and Paul went to the Rural Crime Annual meeting, and there's actually some glitches in their legislation that makes it not that convenient to do what we're suggesting through that. So the reason it says we're going to do it through our economic group and call it our Safe Communities Project is just until we get it figured out. And so, but what we would like to do is get everybody to sign up. And so if we send out a text that said we're looking for a white single cab Chev half-ton, no one would have to risk their life. No one would have to shoot anyone or anything like that. Someone, if everyone would sign up, someone would be able to text either us or the RCMP or the Rural Crime Watch and say, that truck parks every day across from the Wheatfield Inn in Kitscoty, or it parks across from the elevators in Marwayne or wherever. So it just isn't possible that we couldn't find that vehicle if we all work together to do it. And I've talked to John Brecknock several times since the Rural Crime meeting. He said, a lot of the crimes that they solve, I guess you all know he's a retired police officer that was stationed here for some number of years. He said a lot of the crimes that they solve, it just comes from a simple tip from an individual who says, if you went and looked here, you'd probably find something that you were interested in. So there's some difficulties in how we do that, and Debbie Colfus, they're doing it on the Saskatchewan side. They've got some small groups of, you can get an app that takes up to 250 names, and they're doing it just in their own local communities, where they just use it for just sort of literally reporting, crimes in progress. So, but I don't think that program is mutually exclusive from this program. This could be an overall program that everybody in the county signed up for. We'd have to figure out some sort of a protocol for, 4 or 5 people that would sort of be the executive of it, and I'd be happy to be with that, and I think Daryl and Paul would be happy to, and of course, over the evening, we'd be happy to, have a few more volunteers that sort of wanted to help us, put the meat on the bones of that idea. But as you know, more and more people are getting to where they have security cameras. A lot of people, when the security camera, when there's somebody's in the yard, the motion sensor goes off, they get a text on their phone. Even if they're not home, they get a text on the phone. If it's, if it's a vehicle they don't know, they could text it to us. We can forward it to everybody. When we were meeting with the county, I think it was Jason said, they've got people out in the country. If they all got the text, we had a red car break into our acreage. Our neighbor saw it, and it headed west on 512. Well, if we could have texted everybody and said, a red car breaking entry is going west on 512, if everybody would just watch, somebody should be able to report the progress of that car literally till it parks somewhere. So I guess there's, we're sort of open for suggestions as to how to actually make it work, but I think this is we're going to make it work one way or another, and I guess what we're asking you is to be involved. At the very least, we'd like you to do is you sign up, give us your cell number so that we can text you. You go in a restaurant, 80% of the people sitting in the restaurant are looking at their phone. Well, they might as well be checking their Safe Communities thing and seeing if they've been robbed or not. You know what I mean? And so let's see if we can't figure it out. I was talking to the neighbor the other day, and she said some middle-aged man came to her house the other day, knocked on the door, and they live over by us, by Streamstown, and he said, I'm from Husky, I'm looking for paragrams. And she, politely gave him directions down here, over there, and I said, her name's Betty. I said, Betty, nobody from Husky drives around looking for paragrams. You know what I mean? They've all got a cell phone, they've got GPS. Clearly he was looking for a television, and when she was home, that didn't work out so well for him. You know what I mean? And so if we could all just, and maybe when we get into the discussion, we could think about this. My neighbor that lives my friend that lives in an acreage by Lloyd, he said one morning he was in his garage, and his garage sort of opened out to the north, and the front door was on the east, and he said he heard the doorbell ringing, and instead of going in through the house, he just went out. He had the garage door open, and he just went out and around. But by the time he came around, this lady, she's looking through his picture windows. Oh, she said, I was jogging, I'm not feeling good. Could I use your phone? I want to phone my husband to come and pick me up. Well, maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But you see what I mean? I think some of these stories, and these are the things that between us and the Rural Crime Watch we could work out. These are things that the criminals are doing to sort of get access to your property. I was hauling some bales off the airport off of Terry Elko's at the airport, and I got there late on one night, and I had the last few bales right by the gate, and the tractor was right there, and there's a truck sitting by the bales. I thought, well, Terry must have came to see like what I was up to, and so I just went in a circle. But as I'm going in a circle, the truck was going out the gate, so I ran up behind it, and I took the license number, and I phoned the the police, and and said, this is the vehicle I saw. And he phoned me back in a little while and said, oh yeah, he said he was there. He said he admitted he was there. He said it was in the evening. He was driving around with his wife, and they just decided to have a little romantic encounter, so he just pulled in there beside the tractor. He said, what do you think? I said, well, did you ask him if he had his fun before he took my fuel cap off or after? You know what I mean? And so anyway, I said, I don't care. There's a sign on the gate says no trespassing. I said, I want you to go and talk to him. So anyway, he said, well, you have to fill out this form, and I have to admit I never got around to doing it. But like I said, I saw him at this rural crime meeting there, and I said, he said, well, we checked into that guy. He's got a history of having sex in strange places. And I said, take my word for it. Like I said, he's not having sex in strange places. He's got a clever answer when he gets caught stealing. You know what I mean? And do something about it. But see, if in some of these things, I don't know why they don't have. I've watched enough TV to know how to deal with that. I got both of them out there and got them in 2 different rooms. And if I doubt it's true, but you see my point. So we could spread. We could keep the pressure on these people. And I mean, Daryl and them, they have the Facebook, they have the fan out working. A lot of these things. I mean, another thing we were talking about on the weekend. Actually, Les Kuzak was with us at a conference in Calgary, and one of the things he said, a lot of this stuff that's being stolen and fenced, every area could sort of have the stuff that was stolen. If you had pictures of it and your serial number when it was stolen, you could, if you took your pictures in advance when it was stolen, we could put the pictures up on the Facebook page or on the internet, whatever, on our website, so it would make it harder for the people to sell it. I mean, I realize we're sort of, it's all, there's 1,000 things we could do. It's like curing cancer, but I guess we have to do something. So that's really all. Maybe that seems pretty simple, but that's sort of that's our suggestion is let's sign up. Let's get a group of us to where every time somebody gets robbed, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 people get a text. To me, it's crazy to think that our only answer is to have to shoot someone, and we're on that road, as John says. And I mean, and everybody's so frustrated. And what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? So, does anybody have any thoughts or any questions on that? I'll take a breath and see if anybody wants to comment on it. We've got a microphone, or if you have a question, or John, sure. Has anybody got any comments? Yes.
Like to make texting a concealed weapon now.
Well, it could be, yes. Yeah. First thing you know, you won't be able to, yeah. Be careful you're not texting while you're driving. That'll be the next thing, yes, yeah.
You can add, the police can have their own site on Facebook and Instagram, each local area, and post, this is happening, look out for it, and give you the information, and then share it.
See, Cindy, one of the reasons I'm actually fairly sympathetic to the problem that both the police and the Rural Crime Watch have is, I mean, if I say I'm looking for a white single cab Chev half-ton, well, I guess they can be mad at me if they want to be. But it's a little more, I mean, the police have to, if the police say, oh, we're out looking for a white single cab Chev half-ton, I have some sympathy for them not wanting to, if you want to call it slander, anybody. But some of this stuff, I mean, we can do it. The police can look at it, and then they can say, yeah, we're looking for it too. And then the Rural Crime Watch can put it on their Facebook. We could, Your
text also could be forwarded through Facebook, Instagram.
Yes, no, absolutely. To me, we should, some of these people, we should be, once somebody's being robbed, Grady, you were telling us how often Ted Quist was, I mean, they had the motion sensors, they had the cameras, But see, one of the things, like John tells a story, I don't think you told it tonight there, but in some of those, little communities in the, whatever it was, the 15th or 17th century, they had a bell and everybody came running. But they came running, but the guy they were running after just had a club, and they all had a club, and they had a fairly good chance. But I'm a little bit, it concerns me a little bit about saying, well, let's just text our neighbors and we'll all go running over to the neighbors and what? Get shot by somebody with like an automatic weapon. But I would far sooner we just texted each other, and if like Bob Nielsen's being robbed, he could text us and everybody could just watch. And then somebody would say, yeah, I just saw that vehicle, it's either going west or it's going east, and we could literally follow it by text if we would all work at it. You know what I mean? And it may not be simple, but I think it's doable, and why not? And the police would get the text at the same time as we did. So if they happened to be driving like that little red car I was telling you about that was going west on 512, if the police happened to be driving down 897 when they got the text, all they would have to do is turn east on 512. They might meet it. The other people who spend quite a bit of time being paid by us and driving around are our truck highway patrol guys. I mean, they could all be in on the texting as well. And I mean, I'm certainly not against truck safety, but if you look at the statistics, trucks are only involved in 10% of the accidents, and in only 10% of those accidents is the truck actually at fault. And so, like, faulty trucks are only responsible for about 1% of accidents. So, like, to me, it wouldn't hurt if they spent the next 3 or 4 years just sort of cruising the country, and some of these motion detectors that goes off with, I call it unauthorized entry. Well, whenever there was a text that was an unauthorized entry somewhere, even if the highway trucks were somewhere around, they could head to where that unauthorized entry was, and they could be looking for some of these people as well, because we're certainly having, truck accidents aren't a crisis in our lives, but break-in enters are. So I think we need to channel as many resources as we possibly can to this. And the other thing that was mentioned at the county meeting, they said, well, if the criminals will follow our texts, and then they'll know what we're doing. I said, fine, let them move to Rocky Mountain House. I mean, that's, we'll go and we'll get John to speak in Rocky Mountain House, and we'll chase them further away. But nevertheless, Kevin, okay, go ahead.
I have to stand in certain spots. This mic has feedback. When my truck was stolen and I went around the area, the RCMP, I'll just come to the front, said that a lot of times the criminals that are doing this are not trying to confront people. They're trying to find places that are empty. They don't want to be seen.
Don't put the two mics too close together.
It wasn't good back there.
Just speak here.
Yeah,
This one's a lot louder anyway. Yeah, so the detachment commander came out with one of the other officers, and that's what they said. They're looking for opportunities. Most of them, you mentioned, tell your neighbor, and then you'll all get shot up. The thing is, most of them don't want any of these confrontations. The RCMP said that the majority of the time they are trying to find something that is quick and easy, and prior to coming and stealing my truck, they had broken into 3 of my neighbors already, and one of them had found them, and they basically just ran away from them until he didn't stop chasing. And I don't want to go into the whole story there, but I think there is some truth to that. So having people informed of what's going on, I think does help. We're already doing a lot of things well. We can continue to improve on that. I'm not on Facebook, but my wife is, and there was just recently last week or this past week a van that was stolen, and people were constantly updating progress, where it was, people saw it. I think that's probably a good route to go. But I did have a question before all of this. What's going on? I don't know if anybody here can discuss this, knows anything of it, but retribution, if a criminal has been found guilty of one of these crimes, let's say he broken, stole something, damaged a truck, whatever, is there any way for them to have to pay that back? Is that happening?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Thanks.
I don't know. Some of my senior friends, they actually their entertainment through the week is now they go and they sit in Peter Johnson's courtroom. I guess Peter's a fairly entertaining guy, and that's what some of our retired friends like David Hines and that do in their spare time. But that did happen just in the last few months. There was a young fellow that had got drunk, and he keyed a whole bunch of cars, and he, you know, it ended up being charged, and that's another thing that we can do we can do to help each other. He was charged, and so then Peter asked if there was anybody that wanted to. Well, I guess maybe somebody had asked if they wanted to make an impact statement. So one of the people from the dealership came and they made a victim impact statement. And they said, this guy, he said it took us around $100,000. He said he walked down a whole line of brand new cars, scraping them with his thing. He said some people that wanted their car tomorrow, they had to go and find different cars like that. But anyway, this fellow was a computer fellow making pretty darn good money, and he was actually ordered to pay the $100,000 back. And so, yes, I mean, happily, he was a working drunk who had quite a bit of money. Like, I mean, sometimes you can ask, but certainly that's one of the things that I have heard is when they do catch these people, if we go in and make a victim impact statement, and again, one of the things that came up when I was talking to people was, well, we need longer sentences. Well, the judges have a range of, let's just say, between 2 and 5 years, and if there's no victim impact, well, maybe they'll get 2 years. But if somebody's there and says, this is the impact that it's had on me, you know what I mean? And the other story that I heard from, I don't know if it was at the same time, but it was I assume most of you heard the story about, the guy who was stealing the gas from the Anderson boy, and they caught him in Lloydminster, and he was in court a few days later. And the Crown prosecutor said, he'd been caught stealing gas. It was, under 5,000. He recommended, 30 days or something. And Peter said, at least so I was told, he said, no, we're not going to take 30 days. Like he said, my friends in the country, are afraid. This is an absolute epidemic. And he said, I'm thinking we need a 1.5 years to 2.5 years in jail. We have to do something about this. But some of that is coming from the fact that people are coming there and they're making impacts, victim impact statements as to how this is affecting our life. So it does two things, Kevin. One, if they have the resources, you can get you're repaid, I guess, in some cases at least. But at the very least, we as citizens can sort of help make the sentences longer just by being there. And that's the other thing that we could do through our group, through the World Crime Group, however we went to do it. Whenever someone was caught, we could keep track of when they were going to be in court, and a few people could be there to comment on that. So that's just one more thing I think we could work together on.
Even on that topic of somebody going for 30 days of stealing $5,000 in gas, I would much prefer if that was my gas, that person paid me back $5,000 and didn't go to jail at all.
Well, no, I didn't say it was $5,000 worth of gas. It was only.
Even another example, you cost $20,000 worth of damage on a truck because you stole it. What good is 3 months or 6 months in jail for that person? Like this gentleman just said, we're paying for that too. It would make a whole lot more sense for them to pay that $20,000 back. They start with a clean slate. They made a mistake, and hopefully they don't do it again. But at least there's some retribution then. Is there examples of that happening? And if so, where are we seeing that? If not, why aren't we seeing that? Right? And to me, that makes sense. That's what you tell your kids. A kid break a window and he's playing baseball outside. You don't say, well, I'm going to lock you in your room now for a month. You say, well, you're going to work to pay back that window. It makes a lot more sense, right?
Fair enough.
But that's common sense, which isn't all that common nowadays, I guess. I don't know.
Well, but I think it's a good suggestion. And the thing about what we're doing here is, I often quote Ralph Klein, and I always said one of the most astute things that he ever said was, show me a big enough parade and I'd be happy to lead it. And you can be sure if our political people, actually I was supposed to mention that Shannon Stubbs had sent her regret. They're sitting in Ottawa trying to find out, what Mr. Dress-Up screwed away for us today. Turns out today's bad story was, the Canadian government let, was it $47 million to some outfit from South Africa to buy a plane, and now the plane has disappeared. You think, and we're asking, the veterans are asking.
Actually, on a local level, Shannon has sent a message out. She wants people's stories. She wants people to send their stories. Where do we send those to? Do you remember? Yeah, contact Shannon if you've been affected, because she sent this out and she wants to put a list of this together because she is fighting to get more policing happening. She was a big, she spoke at the Marwayne one. I don't know if she was in Manville as well, but
No, she actually organized the Marawayne meeting, yes.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Wes, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do, with regards to Shannon. Oh, it's too close, right? Okay, so with regards to Shannon, I'll just take this off here, I can read it. She's got the motion 167, and that the Standing Committee on the Public Safety and National Security be instructed to undertake a study on real crime in Canada and consider factors including, but not limited to, current rural crime rates and trends, existing RCMP and other policing resources and policies in rural and remote Indigenous communities, particularly in relation to population density, policing geographic area, and staff shortages, the current partnerships with provincial and municipal police, possible recommendations to improve rural crime prevention, and to curb emerging crime rates, and that the committee report its findings to the House within 6 months of the adoption of this motion. So Shannon is working on that with the motion that she's trying to put forward. She wants as many of these 2 or 3 sentences as she can, poignant messages that she can bring to the government and say that we need to have this committee formed so we can get the solution to the rural crime issues. With United Conservative Party, we also have a real crime task force that's going across the province, and we've had it going across the province. I've had, with myself, I've had one set of meetings in Hardisty and one in Killam. But we are going through and we're getting information and we're trying to make this, I guess, get answers for what we can do. Part of the problem is that when the economy went and tanked, well, people had money for drugs prior to that. Now they didn't have any money for drugs. So they're still wanting to have their drug fixed, and now they're going out and stealing it. So part of it goes back to the economy. Part of it goes back to what's called Jordan's Rule. Jordan Rule is that if there's a case that sits in to the courts longer than 2 years, then the case is just dismissed. We have that revolving door, and that's a problem that I think everybody's aware of, and we need to correct some of these things that are going on in our justice system at this time. So we're going through, like you say, across the province, trying to get answers to how we can make this better. And so your being here tonight is so important. But what I want to say, that's another thing that's important, you send the messages to Shannon Stubbs, but for us locally as MLAs, we use that information as well. So I encourage you, because most people will be here with Richard Starkey as the MLA. Send Richard Starkey these notes of what happened. If you're in my right, please send them to me. We only get, 20, 40, if you're lucky, on these hot topic items. Well, actually, Bill 6, I probably got 1,000. But aside from Bill 6, we don't get a lot that makes it actionable for us. So I implore people to write the letters and say that they're fed up with it and we need to have answers. And this is what happened to us. So those are what I would ask you to do. And thank you. And on behalf of Jason Kenney and the United Conservative Party, I almost said Wild Rose Party.
Yeah.
United Conservative Party, thank you.
Thanks, Wes. Well, go ahead, Nolly.
Well, we talked about this 68 years ago, my sister and husband. I talked to this?
Yep.
68 years ago, my sister and husband hired a guy that just come out of jail. And that was 68 years ago, and he just thought it was a joke then being in jail. So, if it's that easy then, I reckon it's a lot better now. I've heard stories, I don't know, too, that in the early winter, people go to jail, so the place to stay, and so, thank you.
Well, I think, like I've said, punishment is a function of pain times time, and Steve West took away the color TVs. You could take away the coffee. There's a lot of things that you could do to make it, a little less fun, I guess, to be in jail. But the one of the suggestions I did make at these other 3 meetings, and was to make our jails drug-free. And I heard, the first time I heard this was 25 years ago. Was Art Hanger was a 25-year, Calgary City policeman. He said the average person gets out of a Canadian jail with a worse drug problem than they went in. And Gary Tyler spoke at I think 2 of those meetings, and he said like you could get drugs in jail, and so you get out of jail and you've got a drug addiction. Like, it doesn't matter how nice a person you are, if you get out of jail with a drug addiction, you can't get a job and wait 2 weeks to get your first check to buy your drugs. Like, they might as well just say, like, see you next Wednesday. You know what I mean? So, like, somehow we have to get to where I don't know if you can get the drugs completely out of the jail, but they certainly need counseling, and they need counseling, they need help to get them off the things. But we can work towards that, but we can't do that together. But so, together we can make this texting thing work, and we could have a big overall texting thing. And if you took 250 people into, say, 7,500, what would that be? 30, we could have about 30 small groups that were just sort of in little, like the Kitscoty community, the Streamstown community, the Alcove community. You could have some small groups that work together on a small one, and then we could have the overall one. We could work with, I think, Daryl, you said you guys have got a new computer that's got all kinds of capacity. We could sort of, we could document these stories. I mean, assuming that we're all looking for volunteers to do the computer work. That's one of the problems. But I saw an ad for the King of Kensington was doing an ad on cancer one night, and he said, like, we're not just going to cure it with one single thing. He said, we're going to cure it with 100 or 150 different things, a little bit here, a little bit there. But I mean, I guess what we're suggesting tonight is let's start doing something. And hopefully you'll all give us your cell number, and within a week or so we'll have it up and we'll start working through it. And anybody, go ahead. Yes.
Carolyn was just mentioning to me, she just wanted clarification. With a lot of people on Facebook already, we are seeing some successes with that, and a lot of people already have that, but it's fairly easy to send things out. It doesn't mean that we don't take a multi-pronged approach to it, but I think if that's already something that you have, that you can keep doing that. Because something you said at the beginning, you wanted some clarification on this. The RCMP said we can't post on there, or?
No.
It wasn't dealing with general Facebook, like, it was a specific case with
the Rural Crime Watch, basically is supposed to put out stuff that, when I'm saying we're looking for this white, single cab Chev half-ton, it's basically a rumor, you know what I mean? And so it has to be more of a fact before it can actually go on the Rural Crime Watch page. But
whereas Facebook, if you see something happen, you can post that out.
You can do it. But the thing about the text is, the thing about the Facebook, most people can set the ringtone on their phone so that if it's coming from the Rural Crime or their Safe Communities thing, it'll be a special, a special ring, so that that's a text that's coming in about a robbery on progress. You can put all the details on Facebook. You can put it on the web page. You can do all sorts of things. You could have the web page could have an inventory of stolen products with serial numbers and everything else.
You're basically saying this is the better approach. We got good and we got better.
Well, this is just one more thing that we could do. And having said that, I see a thing on Facebook, and there was a sign at a church, and it said honk if you love Jesus, and then just below it said text while you're driving if you'd like to meet him. And so I think we have to be cautious about the texting thing too, because we don't want to be causing accidents either. But I guess the thing is, I don't think you see people in a restaurant, you see them in a meeting, and their phone beeps, and it vibrates, and you look at it, and if it's a robbery in progress and it says it's in Kitscoty, we might all go outside and look around. But if it says it's somewhere, you see what I mean? So I think texting is just one of the things, but it's something that we could do.
By the way, I'm kind of walking around looking for people with hands up. That's how I've got
Gary has a question. Sure.
And that last one wasn't really mine either. That was
that's fair enough.
Well, I think we all agree there's a multi-pronged approach to solving this. I've heard, I think, 4 very concrete suggestions: victim impact statements, communicating with our MPs and our MLAs, giving us specific examples. A more general approach has been suggested that we post to Facebook. I'm on Facebook, but I'll tell you one thing I will never do. I will never post to the public. So I need a group and somebody with knowledge and expertise has to set this group up, and I have to be told where it is and how to subscribe to it. So I guess that person has to have some expertise and some resources. And so yes, we make these general statements about Facebook, and it is a good thing to communicate, but you know, it's a general thing, and it doesn't really work for probably 90% of the people. There's a few people that are on Facebook, but I certainly will sit there and look at Facebook. Texting is another very good thing. But again, somebody has to set up a group. I mean, I'm not, if I text, my brother's going to get it, Jim will get it, Rob, my neighbor, doesn't get it. And so who gets my text? There has to be some sort of a link or a group, because I put one text number in or 6. So I guess I would like some specific direction as to how we go down those two avenues. Facebook and
Yeah,
texting.
no,
Who's gonna take ownership?
no, you're absolutely right, Gary. And see what the way we envisioned it, like the text number for the Safe Communities thing would be, let's just say it's 871-1977, okay? So that you would put that in, you would just text to our group. And then if everybody signed up, and I talked to Apple about that, most of these phones, they said, can hold 10,000 numbers or more. So like, there'd be 4 or 5 of us that were, if you want to call it, on the executive. If you texted to the Safe Communities number, it would come to us. But then anybody here that had given us our number, we would look at it and say, look, that looks like a legitimate complaint. We're going to send it out to the 4,000 numbers or the 5,000 numbers. So you would just send it to us, and no one would know you'd sent it. We just forwarded it out. They wouldn't even know that let's just say you saw the white truck going by your place. Go ahead. We need the mic back here. Okay, just a sec. What were you going to say, Gary?
Well, I'd suggest that it's being thought through and it exists, so somebody has to give me that number. My number's on the paper.
Yes.
Are you going to take those numbers and send the number out to us? Okay, this is the community number that you texted.
Yeah, we'll do that, yes. And in fact, I think it's going to be the 871-1977, because it's actually a number of mine that I haven't used for ages, and I thought, well, I can remember the number, so I'll just use that one. But we'll decide on that before the meeting's over. But go ahead, Colleen.
I just wanted to comment that too many citizens don't realize that if you're the one that witnessed the crime, you're the one that has to be prepared to go in court and testify. The RCMP did not witness your crime, and they cannot do the testifying for you. And if people aren't prepared to step up and, go to court, then a record is not formed where these people can be tracked that they are a problem. And I think if people were more willing to step up to the plate when they see things happening that they know are illegal, too many people turn their backs on things and don't go to the police with what they know that's happening in their area. And a lot of this would help prevent a lot of these things that are happening if people were just more willing to come forward and make a statement. And, we can't just blame the RCMP, because a lot of it is a public failing, and that people don't want to step up and do what they should do.
You're absolutely right, but that's the beauty of this. That's the beauty of this number. You can see this. Let's keep using the white truck so we all know what we're talking about. If you see it parked somewhere, if you just text our Safe Communities thing, if it's moving and we're going to try and stop it, we'll text it out right away. But if you just text us and say that truck parks across from the elevator in Kitscoty every night, we'll let the police know, or we'll text them or whatever, and they can go and confront that white half-ton. See, the problem, I hear what you're saying, but the reason people, the problem with that is it's easy to say, oh, you have to go to court. Go to court and, testify this guy against this guy who, just like Kevin said, well, some of them don't have weapons, but the people who robbed the liquor store, in Marwin the other day they had masks and hoodies and weapons, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, I realize at some point in time, maybe we're just gonna have to grit our teeth and go to court and testify against them. But if we made the texting work so that the police could just find them where they parked, and you know what I mean? Because, well, my idea of making the jails free, like, one of my friends came to me and said, Danny, it's a good idea, but he said it's simplistic. Because he said, like, I mean, it's being done by organized crime. And he said, like, somebody's lighting it to get in there, but it's somebody who's got kids and grandkids, and if they don't let it in, like, I mean, they're worried about, I mean, we're dealing with dangerous people, and so, like, they said to me, well, yeah, if you're the guard, if they ask you to let it in, you don't let it in, next thing you know, your kid's going to be having an accident. So we're in tough times here, we really are, and that's the thing I like about the texting is, if we could, some of this stuff, we could solve some of this stuff. And I mean, maybe there's going to be a day where you're going to have to grit and you're going to have to go and testify. And that's, you know, one of the problems even with a victim impact statement. You go there, how much do you want to say? It's pretty easy to, you know, give a victim impact statement against a young, you know, computer worker who's making $150,000 a year and just got drunk. But it's a little different thing testifying against somebody who's, you know, regularly, you know, committing armed robbery with an automatic weapon. So it's a complicated thing, and that's why I really like the texting and the Facebook. I mean, sure, they sort of know who, but if we go into the rural crime number, it comes out from or the safe communities number. Well, then it's us that's sort of spreading the word around. And I mean, I guess at some point in time they might want to pick on the 4 or 5 people that are organized, and I don't know, but at least it gives you you can do an awful lot without having to, you know, cause yourself any misery. But do you want to comment on any of this, John, or how do you think we're doing? Or we're okay? Is anybody? Oh, Greta. Oh, Greta, and then Jason.
I have a pretty loud voice, so I don't know that I need this or not, but I'd be interested to know how many people in this gathering are already Rural Crime Watch members. Because if you are, you know that we already have a phone fan-out system that has been used for several years now to let us know. I've been receiving phone calls for years when a crime is in progress or when they're looking for a vehicle. This would be in addition to that.
Yes, yeah.
Which is great. So I think you should be working very closely with your Rural Crime Watch. And I don't know, I saw Daryl Wright.
No, he is here, and we are working very closely with him. And
He would like to talk a little bit about how that fan-out system is working and how this could work together with it, Danny. It might help your cause.
Sure, you know.
But that is, we have been using that for several years, and Colleen was our lady on the phone that was giving us the messages, and we worked for quite a few years to get that phone system working better, because it seemed like at the start we were getting the messages 4 days after the theft, and we went to the RCMP and said, we need this information when it's happening. We need to know, okay, this robbery has just happened, and exactly what you're saying, this white half-ton with the red gas tank in the back, just headed west on 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
But that is happening with a phone-out system, so this would be in addition to that. And my suggestion is that everybody join Rural Crime Watch.
Well, no.
And you work with the Crime Watch people, which you probably already are.
Exactly. No. Yeah.
That's just my comment.
You're absolutely right. And one of the problems with joining the rural, it's not a problem, but one of the, if you want to call it an obstacle, to join the Rural Crime Watch, you have to do a criminal record check. And Gerald and I and Paul talked about this. You know, we talked one night for 3 hours. He's like, we might get 5,000 people to give us their text number or their phone number. We're not likely going to get 5,000 people to go to the trouble of doing a criminal record check. So we said they actually went to the annual meeting. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for you, Daryl, and they asked the rural crime, sort of the provincial board, like, could we have a safe communities project as a part of the Rural Crime Watch? And I guess the answer, it's fair to say, was, well, it'd be easier if you just work together and let someone else, which it turns out to be our economic group, let them have the Safe Communities Project. And so that's what I've lost track of how many hours Daryl and Paul and I have spent talking on the phone. We've had about 3 or 4 like 2-hour conference calls as we're trying to work out the logistics of this. And so like one of the things we want to do is we want to make the texting work. And then when we start gathering the information, like the stuff that's a rumor, like, I mean, it can be on the text, it can be on the Facebook or whatever. Once it's sort of like, I mean, I guess that there's some point in time when the RCMP says like this is legitimate stuff that the Rural Crimes should be looking at, then it'll be on the Rural Crimes Facebook page or the website or whatever. So we are working like I've spent more time talking to Daryl and Paul about this than anybody else since we started working on it. So and I don't think either of us are trying to exclude the other one. It's just a matter of like there's some things they can do. Do you want to comment on this, Daryl, or do you think I'm saying that well enough? Like there's some things that they're quite able to do, and there's some things that because of their legislation we're suggesting that doesn't work for them. So we'll do that, but we'll figure it out.
I wish my wife had come tonight because it's the first time I've actually never said a word in 2 hours. And I was sitting back here in the back row just listening. And I do really probably have to say something before the night's out. And really, I think you pointed something out that everybody should be aware of tonight. Crime Watch was established back in 1980. I think it was actually the year of 1980. And I'm just going to make this as simple as I can so everybody can understand. It was set up to work this way. And this way, in my opinion, doesn't work anymore. If I just ask a kind of a quick survey, I bet you there's not very many people in here that were text messaging the way they are today. I bet 3 or 4 years ago they weren't doing that. 3 or 4 years ago, I bet a lot of people were on Facebook. So what I'm trying to say here is the whole world is just changing so fast that the Real Crime Watch did not keep up to it, in my opinion. Now, I'm the president of the Kitscoty Crime Watch, and I was about to change that. I'm also sitting on the provincial board, and I guess what I'm trying to say is we work very slowly. Things have got to go through process to get things changed. And what the problem that is, not with you people here tonight, but with Crime Watch, that is already pointed out, is Crime Watch cannot put anything out publicly unless it goes through the RCMP. To me, that's a big stumbling point. So we need that changed. And what Jan and I and Paul talk about is let's get this started. Let's get the ball rolling. We're in support of anything that will reduce crime. Let's let that be known. We're in support of that. So what we need to do is get something going, and then change. Like as we get that going, also change our policy so that we can work together and change Rural Crime Watch so we can reduce crime. I don't. Does anybody have any questions or like about Rural Crime Watch or like I guess what I'm trying to say is the world is just rotating so fast now, and so is crime with it. And that's why we're all here tonight, right? Is to try and put a lid to it. Yes, Rita?
One other comment. This is all good. I hear what you're saying.
Better give her the mic, Daryl, so we can all hear what she's saying. Yes.
I hear what you're saying, and it's all good, but without enough RCMP to go to that truck when we find it, we're hooped. We need more funds, and we need more RCMP. And yeah, I agree. This is all good. We need this too. But if we can't get more funding for our RCMP, my sister-in-law is in Hawaii. She's been hit 8 times by the same criminals. They have them on camera. They're wearing balaclavas. They're winking at the cameras. The police have been there 3 times. Each time they've been there, they say they'll be back, and they are back. And the next time they say they'll be back, and they are back. They're not getting caught. There's 6 of them. This is my sister-in-law. If I volunteer to drive in her yard once a day to help out, what am I going to do against 6 guys? We don't have enough policing. We need more funds.
You're right, Greta, but you're absolutely right, and we're working on that. And to the county's credit, they're working on it too, and it's a slow process. But you don't have to do just one thing and then wait till something all these things are going on as we speak. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Dale, or Dale or not. But I mean,
Just before he does,
okay.
Those are the stories that I think need to get sent into Shannon's office. It's exactly that type of stuff. So if you have these personal stories, just go online, if you can get on a computer, Google search for contact info, and send her all of this. Wes read the statement there.
You're right. But see, Greta, to go back to the white hafta again, if it's not that hafta is just parked somewhere. They're stealing every day, so the sooner the police get there, the better. But if we could identify where it parks, then we're not risking our life. You know what I mean? But I agree with you. We need the resources, but that takes time. And I think the proper people are working on that too. Our county people are working on it. I'm sure the provincial people are, and Shannon is clearly working on it at her level. But we can encourage them, but we can also what we should do is we should all sign up, and this is like selling Amway. There's 100, 150 people here. If we all got 10 people to sign up in the next week, we'd have 1,500 people, getting a text. And when your sister-in-law is getting robbed, when that camera went off and it texted said there's a robbery, if everybody for about 15 miles around just came and just sort of watched on the road, you could follow that. And if once the police knew that you had 100 of us there watching them, texting them, we could follow them back to wherever they park. You see what I mean? And then you could catch them. And I think the police are overwhelmed with paperwork, and that's another thing we have to say. Look, we're fed up with this. There's too much paperwork. Our friend Raf Saeed, he said in the health system, he said he thinks, he calls it CYA, cover your ass medicine. He said the paperwork adds a third to the cost of the healthcare system. My guess is it's adding a third to the cost of our policing system too by asking for some of these ridiculous reports. But it's all, again, these are things we can talk to our politicians when we have time about saying, look, we have to give these guys more freedom to just go and get the guy and maybe you shouldn't have to fill out a report unless the guy's dead. And if he's sort of in the system, say fine, we'll deal with it. You see what I mean? Let's start somewhere. Did I see somebody else with their hand up as I was? Well, how about this? Unless anybody has any, we could sort of go round and round on this. I think, it's Jason, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think it's important we support the people that do get charged with these firearm offenses and stuff, so that it's not like John talked about how expensive justice can be in our country. For Gerald Stanley, or there's a guy in Okotoks right now, Eddie Maurice, who just recently got broke into, and he fired some shots, hit the guy in the arm. And he's charged with three counts of firearm offenses. And they have set up a funding account for him. So I think that's something everybody can go home tonight and do. We can help fund these people so they can fight these charges. Where the state, I think, is basically misdirecting its power against the wrong people. It shouldn't. So that finances are a limiting factor for these people fighting these charges and stuff. It's fine to set up the texting and that, try and prevent things that happen, but when one of us shoots somebody, or it does happen, I think it's important that they can defend themselves, because it could happen to any of us. Well, that's all I was going to say. And if you want to, the guy's name is Eddie Maurice, so I think if you just put support Eddie Maurice in your browser or whatever search engine, it'll come up. There's a blogger, Corey Morgan, who's wrote about it, and he's got the information on the funding accounts and stuff on his page.
Thank you, Jason. You're right about that, because in that, as I was talking about this, I had a half a dozen people tell me, oh yeah, was it Buddy Bensmiller or one of the boys held that guy the other day, and they said, no, he's being charged. But I actually phoned Buddy to find out if that were true or not, and he said, no, we haven't been charged. But part of that is coming from the public outcry from people saying to the police, heaven help you if you charge somebody who's protecting his own property. So they're sort of getting that message. So I think that's a result of what we're doing anyway. So Dale, did you want to comment on anything? Or it's sort of a work in progress, but I certainly know you're aware of it. Do you want to just take a
Yes, with the rural crime strategy, we are looking at getting more police officers on it, but the problem is, it can take up to 2 years with your application, so it's not a, process that's gonna go, right away.
No. Ray Ferentz was telling me the other day, I was talking to him about this, and he said he had a New York City police chief who was out there hunting, and he said when they were getting tough on crime in New York, like what they would do is they would just take about 3 police cars and they'd just go racing, through town with their sirens on. And he said it just gets everybody's attention. They weren't going anywhere. They were just sort of, if you want to call it, flying the colors, but it sort of makes the criminals, they think, boy, they're really getting serious about getting somebody now. And, you talk to John Brecknock, I think he's happily retired right now, but my guess is if you wanted somebody to drive around in a police cruiser and sort of investigate some of these things, take a look at that. I think if you told him he could drive down the highway with his siren on for 5 minutes every week, he might do it for nothing for you just to get to drive around with the siren on. But, there's some things we could do. It isn't easy. Like, what do you say, a 2 years waiting time to get but, yeah, what do they say? The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the next best time is today. And so it's the same thing here. Like, the problem will be just as serious the day we get the policemen. So let's get started. So, is there any other questions or comments? I think if everybody, I've got 2 phone numbers. My phone number is on my business card back there. It's 808-0271, and then there's the 871-1977 number. If you want to text me your number, and if you want to text me any suggestions you have, I always think I give an awful lot better speech driving home than I ever gave at a meeting. And I mean, most people are like that. You'll be heading for home and you'll think, gee, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have said that. So when you think of it, as long as it's before 11 or after 7 tomorrow morning, just text it to me, unless you're being robbed, in which case you can text any time. But nevertheless, think, as we get thinking through this, you say, well, have you thought about doing it this way, or could we do it, whatever. So let's, I don't know, yeah, go ahead, Dale. Now here's a fellow who actually does know a policeman. That's right, go ahead.
Thank you, Danny. My name is Dale Erickson. I'm a retired RCMP. Did 35 years with the RCMP. Must be catching a cold because my voice is going here. But about 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, I retired and moved to Tully Lake. And it's a small little community and north of the river. And, things are going along pretty good there, and then all of a sudden we were experiencing the same problems you guys are experiencing here. And I decided one day that I needed to do something. So I set up a community meeting, and we decided to go ahead with a Tully Lake Crime Watch. And, nothing against the Rural Crime Watch, but having worked with the RCMP, seeing what has to happen for things to get on or to get reported has to be approved by the RCMP and so forth. We decided to do our own thing. So we set up a Facebook page. We also have some of the people that are on Facebook, but they're on texting. So those that don't have Facebook, we text them if something's going on. But actually, it's worked out really good. Anxiety levels at one point were right up here. It was like everybody wanted to shoot everything that was moving and whatever. And after we had this meeting, we had a couple of meetings, and we decided that we needed a process to follow. And the process that we looked at, and it was discussed at the meeting, was that if something was going on, if you were driving down the road and there was a suspicious vehicle parked somewhere, everybody's carrying a cell phone, got a camera on it, picture the license on the vehicle, post it on the website. If there's people in it, obviously, take your discretion as to whether you stop and do anything there or whatever. A lot of people do stop. Myself, for example, stop and find out what's going on. A lot of times there's people that are just sort of out there casing the place. So they move on quickly once they realize that, you've put a face to a vehicle and that sort of thing. I think it has helped. One of the things that we had to look at was to keep the Facebook page closed, a closed group. You can't have an open group that anybody can join. Obviously, if you keep it open, criminals are going to use Facebook as well. They're going to query it and they're going to see exactly what you're doing in your area. So we had to keep it closed. And we had to keep it closed within sort of the Pelican Lake area. We even, you know, it was a stretch to go, say, Marwayne or even other areas, because we knew who the people around our area were. We knew who their contacts within their Facebook were, so we knew where the messaging was going to go. We didn't know where if it went to Marwayne or if it went to Heinsberg or where, if it went down the road, what was going to happen. So we kept our Facebook closed. If I'm at home and at 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody drives into my yard, first thing I do, I have a phone list by right by my bed. All of the people in our rural or crime watch, Pelican Crime Watch, provided their phone numbers, their cell numbers, their land locations, all on this sheet of paper. So I have a binder. Everybody has access to that in our thing. So if somebody drives into my yard at 4 o'clock in the morning, the first thing I do is phone my specific person that I would trust with my life and say, someone's in my yard, don't know who it is, it's 4 in the morning, obviously up to no good. Their immediate job, the first person I phone, is to phone the RCMP and get them on their way over, tell them what information they have. The reason we did it this way is because I've dealt with our communication systems before in the RCMP. I've dealt with the RCMP, obviously, I was a member there. And when you get on the phone with those 911 people, they want to know everything. They want to know your size of your shoes. You know, like, it's ridiculous. You've got somebody coming into your yard, you don't know what's happening, you're trying to figure out what's going on, and you're on the phone trying to deal with that. You can't do that. So you phone somebody that you trust, they get on the phone with the RCMP, they deal with that, and they also fan out to other people, local people around your place, and they're on their way over. Now, again, this is what we've decided to do. It has lowered the anxiety levels down to about here. Things are posted on Facebook. I've seen less posts recently because I think people are getting the idea that you don't park your vehicle, you don't do those things, you don't go behind Danny's tractor or whatever and do what you're going to do. But those things are, you know, it's stopping. So, but it takes a community to do that, and I'm pretty proud of Pelican Lake for stepping up and doing that. I saw this as a post on our Facebook account about this meeting. I wanted to come and see what you guys are doing. I think it's great. I think your thing about texting is a super idea if you can get that going. But the eyes and the ears of the community is what's going to help you. Is what's going to save you. And you know, we're doing well at Pelican Lake. Nothing's perfect there, and we're always looking for suggestions, and that's why I thought I'd come out, and that's my 2 cents worth. So.
Thank you, Dale. I think that is a really good idea, that like have your number one designate that you already know who you're going to call, you know, so you can call them and let them be on the phone with 911 while you're dealing with whatever the problem is, and then you know what I mean, then you know they can be on the way. But I see this as sort of groups within groups within groups, you know what I mean? So you've got your 20 or 30 or 40. This the Colfax lady said they have 70 members, and anybody that leaves me their email, I'll send you an email. This is how they're using their specific group on, and I think she said there's about 6 or 8 groups of them over there that have a group of 60 or 70 people. So they're sort of doing what you're talking about, Dale. They've got their own little group, you know what I mean? And I mean, and at the same time, like when you phone the person, say there's somebody in my yard, I mean, they could text our bigger group and we could send it out to the whole thing. But in the meantime, the 25 or 30 of you that you trust, you can be dealing with it, and we can all be sort of like, and one of the things that Daryl and I talked about, we said, well, maybe we shouldn't send it to the whole thing. Like, what if somebody's being robbed in Blackfoot? I said, well, like, I mean, or Vermilion. Like I said, well, with cell phones, I mean, like lots of us will be driving by Vermilion. So even if the robbery's in Vermilion, you might be the guy driving down the road that sees the car pulling onto the road. So, but I think it is a series of groups within groups. So go ahead.
Yeah, just along that lines, Danny. Similar in our neighborhood, in October, I believe it was, and other incidents happened. Our neighborhood is not quiet, and people shouldn't go behind the tractor over there because now we have the neighborhood group watching. And so our neighbors set up, it's called WhatsApp. So under WhatsApp we have neighbors, and there's about 30 of us. And so some of them, are interested in joining rural crime, or additionally this different method of communication. But this app, I'm like this fellow here, somebody set up the technology and I will learn how to use it. And so my neighbors here are also on it. And we have a map of where everybody lives. All of our neighbors don't necessarily know each other anymore. That's another thing that's changed about rural Alberta. So our group, while we might not all know each other, I know who they all are. And there's limited access to the highways from our neighborhood. And so nobody can, do something suspicious anymore without us all getting to know about it. And it actually works in another positive way. So when our county gas utility guys are out there for the county, and they're in the blue truck, but the suspicious blue truck was there a week before without the county sticker. We actually also can protect the good people out there doing their job. So one of the neighbors sent around, hey, in case you guys all didn't know, this was sent out by the county, and it's a really good way to get information out locally. We also have it's a closed group, so we all know who's on it, and maybe there's some questionable neighbors a little farther south, but that's a Daryl Rakes department.
They're talking about you, Daryl.
And then, like, I would encourage, everybody's got somebody tech savvy, to come up with a communication that works to look out for your neighbors, and then support those groups like Rural Crime Watch and yourselves, anything that helps it.
Well, see, one of the things that John was actually speaking at a conference that we had that Les Hozack came to with us from the county too, but we were on the weekend and it was called Stemming the Tide of Red Ink, Meeting Canada's Debt and Deficit Challenges. And to a certain extent, when they say they don't have the resources to do it, they're not totally wrong. I mean, what are we running, like just, a $30 billion deficit federally and $10 or $15 billion provincially, and all the provinces run. So we're like, to me, the best communities over the next 25 years are going to be the ones that do their best to learn to work together. Sure, maybe we'll get some resources from them, but I think we're going to have to set an example here of cooperation and basically force them into to working with us. And I don't think there's any one answer to it. Like, what have we heard? A half a dozen pretty good suggestions tonight, but if we all work away at it, I'm sure we'll get it smoothed out. So having said that, I think the evening's starting to wear on, but I think it's fair to say that Daryl and Paul and I are going to continue to work away at trying to make this work, and we could use 2 or 3 more people if you wanted to be on the committee. And I always say my patience with people is inverse to how much they're paid. And of course, none of us are being paid, and I have a lot of patience with us, and we'd have a lot of patience with you if you'd want to be on our group. And maybe you want to be part of our group by just sending me a text and saying, well, have you considered doing this, or have you considered doing that? But how about if we call it unless there's another question, let's call it an evening. We can have coffee, and you can take my card with my phone number, or you can write down that 871-1977 number. And if you have any suggestions, you can text them to me. And like I say, if you want to be on the committee, there's a good chance to get on right now without an election. So, any suggestions? Well, could we? Actually, just Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, and I know you're going to do this too, but I wanted to thank John Robson and yourself for setting all this up. I know he lives in Ottawa. He was down at the conference that you hosted there in Calgary. He's a sessional lecturer. I don't think that was brought up before. Are you still doing that?
I haven't had a course in 4 years.
Oh, well, you used to.
Very nominally. Yes.
Yeah, because you could be like the guy at U of T. But he's come out this way, and I think you did a really good job with the presentation before. He's got some DVDs and Blu-rays at the back there. I already bought a few. So have a look at those before you go, because like he said, he doesn't want to take him home. His wife won't let him. I've met his wife before too. Wonderful lady. She sometimes does travel with him, and she's great to talk to as well. And your daughter was with you last time. So I wanted to thank you for coming out this way and sharing all of these wonderful history lessons with us and listening to our concerns here. There's about 100 people out here tonight, I counted at one point. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Well, you make a good point. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, Kevin. One of the reasons I think that John isn't a sessional lecturer anymore is he had the nerve in Ottawa to say that climate change was, although it may be real, but man-made climate change is a hoax. And I think it actually affected your lecturing career because nobody in Ottawa wanted to hear that. And one of the things that our economic group was talking about on the weekend that we're doing is we're studying a book. It's written by a fellow by the name of Alec Epstein out of the States. It's called The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. And I mean, if you look at how comfortably we all live, it's all because of fossil fuels. on Twitter I have a hashtag, and it's called agriculture and oil. If you eat, you're involved. And it's for all these do-gooders like these guys with their signs saying, I don't need oil, I ride the bus. And you think, yeah, you know, good luck, you know, good luck with that, you know what I mean? But, so, I mean, this is the other thing is we're studying this so there's more of us who can talk sort of intelligently and articulately, easy, see I've got some practice to do, but anyway, intelligently at least about like climate change, because this whole carbon tax thing is, I think, the biggest tax ever imposed on us, and it's based on faulty science. And I mean, and we need to understand that. It's hurting our industries, it's hurting our communities, like God knows how many unemployed oil field people we have because of that. So in any event, John is self-funding. He has DVDs for sale in the back there. He's traveled out here. He comes and speaks to us for a pittance because he has, you know, kids, and I guess he's hoping to have grandchildren just like we do, and he's trying to make a better country, but he does need support. You didn't put in a pitch for your documentary yet? You should. John is doing a documentary on Israel, and this is his project for this year. Why don't you take a minute and just tell us about that?
Well, thanks very much for that opportunity. And as Danny said, I am essentially crowdfunded. I write for the National Post, but that's on a per column basis. There's no salary or benefits or anything. The problem, of course, is when I hear an appeal to give to the crowdfunding for some guy who's being charged for defending himself, I think that's a better use of your money. I was going to say that's one of the very important things. Don't leave somebody who's being charged on their own so they can grind them down and make them cop a plea on the lesser charge. If, however, there is any money left over, and if you think what I'm doing is important, please do support it. We did the documentary on Magna Carta, we did the right to arms, we did one on fixing the Constitution, which was not, I must say, a bestseller, but these things happen. We did the one on climate change, which has done quite well, almost 9,000 views online, which, considering there's no dancing cat and it goes on rather more than 5 minutes, is actually a success. And now I want to tell the story of Israel, because people have some very strange ideas about Israel in this country. People think it's not a democracy. They think it's the obstacle to peace. They think it's a museum or a theocracy, and it's not. It's a wonderful country. I've been there. It's very much like Canada, except it's a whole lot smaller. It has many fewer pine trees. But it's a society where people are free to speak their minds without fear, and that's a wonderful thing, and we ought to celebrate it. And so the way the crowdfunding works on Kickstarter, I have a target, and if I don't get all of it, I don't get any of it. And if you make a pledge and I don't make my target, you get all your money back. So it's relatively risk-free, but there's always the danger that it will succeed. And more generally, let us make a point of supporting one another and the things that we believe in. The CBC gets $1.3 billion a year or something, of which I get exactly none. So I'm a bit outgunned there, but you can help. When we made the Magna Carta documentary, and it was the first time after Sun News collapsed that we got to do this, because my wife said, gee, I don't think Sun News is looking very solid. I'll bet you, though, that Canadians would back this venture. Let's have faith in them. And she said, maybe $50,000. And I said, you know what? I can't make a proper documentary for that. It's got to be 75. Let's believe in it. And over 1,200 people chipped in, an average of $70. And that was everything from a few people who had the money, put in $1,000, to people putting in $1 or $2 and telling some friends. And that's how we do it. It's also how you do the Indiegogo for somebody who's been charged with defending themselves, and how you make groups like Danny's work. Because, yeah, you need a webmaster. We really need somebody who's retired on a comfortable income and who's very tech savvy. And that person needs to talk to Danny. Because right now the EEA, our web person is volunteer. And there's only so much you can ask of somebody who's actually trying to make a living somewhere else. But the same is true of me. This is where my hat goes around. If you think it's important to have me doing what I do, I need you to support me. I need you to ask your friends. $3 a month. That's what I'm trying to get people to put in. You know, Jordan Peterson, after the forces of political correctness came after him, he gets $50,000 a month from Patreon, from over 8,000 people putting an average of $7. That's the kind of sum that makes a difference. So if you think my work is worthwhile, please do contribute. the DVDs are for sale for $20. You can also get the stuff free on YouTube. So it's just in order to help me survive. And I can't go home with them. So by the end of the evening, you can have them for 10 or 5. But if you want to pay 20, please do. Either way, don't make me take that suitcase back to Brigitte because she'll be very cross. The basement's too full of these things.
Yeah,
But yeah.
the website that we go to if we wanted to donate $3 a day.
Yeah, there's a yes, I'll.
$3 a month, I mean.
Well, $3 a day if you feel
No,
like it.
no,
Yeah,
no, no.
yeah. There's a yes, I'll help button. There's also a link to the documentary crowdfunding. All the things that make it possible for people to stand against the tide and get our country back to where it ought to be, where it used to be, and where it should be. So thanks very much for the chance to make that pitch. Thank you very much for coming out and listening to a history lecture when you've got a crime problem. I appreciate that nobody walked out or threw anything. I hope that it was of some use, and if it is, please do help with my work, and please do help Danny get this group set up so that you can band together and get this crime problem under control, because it has no business existing in your community. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Unless somebody has one last question, I'll just thank you all for coming. I think there's a bit of coffee, and like you say, you've got my phone number. You can send me any suggestions you have, and we'll keep you posted. Thank you very much.